What's up, everybody? Brothers, sisters, psychonauts, and seekers of truth. It is Ananka, and welcome to my bazaar. Today, I'm going to be reading the Norse legend, Thor fishes for the great serpent. This version comes from the book Viking Spirit by Daniel McCoy. With all that being said, let our story begin. Thor traveled to Jotunheim, the wild, forbidding land at the outer edge of the cosmos, on numerous occasions. Often, he went with the sole intention of killing giants, in which case he needed no disguise. But sometimes, his goal involved enlisting the aid of particular giants along the way. Such undertakings called for assuming a character so that the giants whom he met would not recognize him for who he was, the foremost enemy of their kind, who had killed more of them than any other being in the universe by far. Once, Thor journeyed to the land of the giants in hopes of obtaining what was, to his mind, the greatest prize out there to obtain: the head of Jormungand, that grisly son of Loki who coiled around all the land in the vast ocean that lay beyond its shores. Due to the delicate nature of this mission, which would involve lodging with the giants themselves on his way to the far side of Jotunheim, Thor prudently decided to don a disguise. In this case, that of a simple young man from Midgard. The humble lad made it to the house of the giant Hymir, who dwelt on the rugged, weather-beaten coast, and he stayed there overnight. In the morning, his host, who was a fisherman by trade, prepared to row out to sea. Thor announced that he wanted to be a helpful guest and to go with him to fish. But Hymir scoffed at the offer, saying that the youth would freeze to death before the end of the day's work. Thor was so incensed that he had to summon all his strength to resist the urge to pull out his hammer and smite the giant right then and there. But he turned his desire down, and instead calmly insisted to the giant that he would not freeze, and that furthermore he wanted to row farther out and stay longer than the giant was accustomed. Hymir laughed at what he thought was just a brash, foolhardy boy, and agreed to let him come. Thor asked Hymir what they would use as bait. His host replied that if he was so confident in his abilities as a fisherman, he should go get his own bait. So Thor walked out of Hymir's house and into the pen where the oxen were kept. He grabbed the largest ox, a humongous bull, and beheaded him. When he reached the shore with the ox's head under his arm, he found that Hymir had already pushed the boat out. He splashed over to the boat, climbed into the stern, grabbed 2 oars, and started to row. Hymir was startled by how fast his guest was able to row. Before long, they had reached the area where Hymir usually stopped to fish. "That's enough rowing," he called to his companion in the stern. "We are here." But Thor kept rowing and rowing and rowing. The shore receded further into the distance and then disappeared altogether. Hymir commanded his guests to row no further, lest they draw near to that dreaded serpent that dwell in these deep waters. But Thor replied that he intended to go out just a little further, and, over the giant's protestations, he did so. By the time Thor reached the point where he was content to stop rowing, Hymir's fear chilled him more than the cold, hard wind that blew relentlessly over those waters. He marveled at how such a mediocre-looking youth not only had the stamina to make it out this far, but the courage to do so as well. The disguised god laid down his oars. He readied a strong fishing line and tied an enormous hook to its end. On the hook, he placed the ox's head. Then he cast his line and waited. After a while, the two began to hear a faint rumble coming from all around them. As it grew closer, it became louder and more fearsome. The boat trembled, and the fishing gear in the bottom clanked and clattered as it was tossed to and fro. Then there was a great crash as the serpent snapped at the bait. And then the whole ocean seemed to jerk away as the snake clamped down on the hook and tried to free himself. Thor braced himself and began to reel in his line with all his might. His feet broke through the bottom of the boat, but still he pulled and pulled. At last, Jormungand's head began to rise from the waves. His burning eyes stared implacably into those of Thor, who glared back at him with a face of utter enmity and determination. The snake spat venom, and the god swerved to avoid it. Thor raised his hammer and prepared to deliver the death blow to his enemy. But the prophecy that neither the monster nor the god were to slay each other until Ragnarok had to be fulfilled. Hymir had been cowering in fear at the far corner of the boat this whole time, but when he saw the beast's head before him, he could bear this mortifying scene no longer. With one swift, anxious motion, he swiped at the line with his fishing knife, slicing through it and cutting Jormungand free. The bleeding ghoul wasted no time in diving to the bottom of the ocean, where Thor could not reach him. Thor's rage was now greater than ever before, and he lunged at the giant who had prevented him from smiting his arch foe. With one mighty blow to the head, Hymir was knocked overboard and fell face first into the waters. When the soles of the giant's feet had disappeared into the cold murk, Thor abandoned the waterlogged boat and waded to shore. All right, everybody. That is the end of our story. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And I will see you in the next one, fam. Doses.